This episode of Horsepower Heritage is sponsored by Model Citizen Diecast. And this week's pick is the Le Mans winning 1959 Aston Martin DBR1 in 1/43rd scale by Spark. It was driven to victory that year by Roy Salvadori and Carroll Shelby, and the Ferraris never caught him. Use the promo code HERITAGE at checkout and get 10% off your order. Limitations apply. From race cars to street cars and everything in between, it's ModelCitizenDiecast.com. Because your inner child still wants to play with cars. Hi everybody, welcome to Horsepower Heritage. I'm Maurice Merrick, and greetings to all of you listening from places like Huntington Station, New York, Brunswick, Georgia, Buckeye, Arizona, Santa Monica, California, Burnaby, British Columbia, Warsaw, Poland, Beverwijk in the Netherlands, and Northampton, England. We're back with another great episode for you, and my guest today is automotive photographer and author René Staud. And more about René in a minute, but I want to remind you, don't forget to follow the podcast on the app of your choice, and if that app happens to be Apple Podcasts or Spotify, be sure to leave me 5 stars and a quick review because that helps other people discover the show. Really important. And if you want to throw a few bucks in the gas tank here, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage and support the show for as little as $2 or whatever amount you like. There's a link in the show notes for you, so please consider being a sponsor as well as a listener. That's always appreciated, and it helps keep the podcast coming. All right, well, today, like I said, I've got photographer René Staud. And, you know, I've interviewed a lot of photographers, which is no accident, because unless you're fortunate enough to live in a place where there are plenty of amazing cars running around, then photography is really how we fall in love with them all, right? So photographers are really important in the car world. And in René's case, he's built an incredible portfolio of the world's most desirable and iconic cars through his many books and his commercial work. But here's the twist. In the 1980s, René rewrote the book on the studio photography of automobiles. So if you don't know his name, I guarantee you've seen his work. You know those incredible shots of cars isolated on a studio set with that perfect overhead lighting that accentuates every curve and body line and just the pure beauty of the car? Well, it was René that really became the master of that art when he invented a lighting system called the Magic Flash. And his innovations soon caught the attention of the most prestigious automotive brands in the world. He'll tell us all about that in this episode. And René's latest book is out now. It's the newly revised edition of his classic 300 SL book. So without further ado, here's my interview with René Staud, right here on Horsepower Heritage. Let's hit it. René Staud, thanks for joining me. How are you today?
Thanks, Maurice. Thank you very much. I'm very fine. And today I'm talking from Mallorca, Spain, in Central Europe.
Yes, it's the sun is not yet risen here, but that's okay because I was excited to get up this morning and speak with you about your photography. René, you've been prolific, I would say, in producing the most incredible books on classic cars, the most wonderful photographs of the world's most desirable cars. The SL is fascinating to me. It's, you know, Mercedes has managed to continue to innovate and, you know, keep that spirit of the car over the years. I would say that besides the 911, it's probably the most successful evolutionary series out there.
I do not know any other sample.
Do you remember the first car that captured your attention as a boy?
Absolutely. It was a 356 Porsche when I was very small, very young boy. And also I was following the model evolution of all the Porsche cars. And in 1963, I was one of the first who saw this car because Porsche is not only located in Stuttgart, they did all their test runs in or around Stuttgart. So that's why I saw them very early. And also, I had from this time a good relationship to Mercedes, especially to the SL. They are very rare that time, But the one or other day, I saw the Galving when I was very young, 5 or 6 or 7.
And you were interested in photography at a young age as well.
Yes, it came very early because I was born in an artist family. My dad was a sculptor, wood sculptor, and not so busy after the Second World War. And those little few business he could do, he always struggled around because when he always talk about his work and could not show his work. That's why I decided to make pictures from his work. And this was my entrance in the marketing business. And that time I started with photography.
And you were kind of self-taught as a young man, but also worked as an apprentice, as I understand?
I worked as a photographer, still doing my school. And after school, I start a trainee in a portrait studio. So for 3 years, I was learning all processes, black and white and color, photography people for passports and weddings and family shots. And although in this studio, they did some small pack shots for Stuttgart manufacturing companies. And I was fascinated about the necessary of picture for selling products, because for me it was very impressive that companies produce things, even cars. They need big books or big brochures to explain the products. I was fully fascinated about the system, and I decided to be a part of that.
You know, I really love the marketing brochures and materials from Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Porsche from the 1950s, 60s, 70s. They had a wonderful style. Was that an influence on you?
Yes, because it was very artistic works. Most of the brochures, or some of the brochures, already are illustrated, and it was like small, nice entertainments. Whenever it was a product, I never expect to buy one because my earnings were very little and cars were very expensive. But the brochures in the 50s and the 60s were quite different from today. But this was an influence for me to decide, when I start doing car photography, I will do it totally different. And the biggest approach for me was working for Montblanc, the point holders, and working for Dunhill, the lighters, because these products were very simple designed, very expensive, very beauty, and those clients would not have any schnick-schnack around the picture, just the product and just one light, very reduced. And from this time, this idea came: whenever I shoot a car, I will do it in this style. From this idea came the origin René Staud style, very reduced.
Yes, so a very minimalist approach to photography.
Yeah, show the minimum, and when people look on this picture, they see more than I show. It's like a nice girl, only with a small light, and you have more imagination. And this is my secret still with the cars. Don't show too much, show only the beauty, or show only a part or a piece of it.
I understand, yeah. Remove all the distractions.
Yeah, a good product need nothing, and sometimes only a part of the product explain the whole story. When I show you a spoiler from the Porsche 2.7, you immediately know the whole car. And this is this works with many of those iconic cars. Not so easy with a new design, but very easy with iconic cars. My 5 iconic cars is the Beetle, Volkswagen, the SL, the 911, the G-Wagon, Mercedes, G-Model, and the 2CV from Citroën, the French one. These are my 5 iconics. You show me a piece for 5 centimeter, I explain you the whole car. And I touch one part, I know all. That's the iconic generation. Now, most of the cars, similar. It's one of my future projects to make a book with 10 cars, and you can remove the badge and you can sell it as a Kia, you can sell it as a Hyundai, you can sell it as a Toyota, so I can sell this book to 10 companies. I only remove the badge because everything is same. Mostly the first cars followed by function. And this is very interesting that these old cars, even they are very simple designed, they are so typical and they are iconic items because there is, in German we say, no Firlefanz, no Schnickschnack. It's just the most needed things and finished, not more.
Yeah, it's a design purity.
This is the right word, design purity. Yeah. But now we have it back. We have this purity back in the SL, and also we have it back, or we still have it in the 911.
So, René, your breakthrough was with your studio lighting system. Can you explain that, how that came about? I understand that the inspiration was a table lamp, Taschenlampe.
Yeah, the idea of the most reduced light is a light who don't shine the car or the people. It's the reflex of the product. And it works so far with people only with the eyes. You have, when you make a portrait shooting, you have only one reflecting part, it's the eyes. So it's very important. You need a light who fits the person's eye. And for cars, it's much more complicated because everything has a reflection in the car. And I would not have a reflection. I would have one piece of light who highlight the design. And I tested on a table with a scale model, scale 24. And the easiest thing was a shoebox. And I covered the shoebox with translucent paper and put a small Taschenlampe, small light inside. And I see the reflection on the scale model car. And this brings me to the decision when I have a car of, let's say, 4.5 meter, like a Porsche at this time was in length. I need a light bank of 9 meter, and the width of the 9 meter bank was that time 1.5 meter. But this came from the availability of the diffuser. There was a fabric I used for this lamp, a very good shining material, was only in a dimension of 1.5 meter available. And inside there was one tricky part. It was a flashlight, and the flashlight was added from one side to the other side. So I put not one flashlight inside, so I put a chain of flashlights, which made the things not cheaper and for the electrification not easy. But for me was crystal clear. The light has to come out from a flash because of the color temperature. There is in the 60s, 70s, 80s, already in the 90s, there are no other film available, only the Kodak Ektachrome films, and they are only 100% neutral with flashlight. And this flashlight had to have a certain number of Kelvin degrees. And when everything is finished, 100% balanced, the color in the slide is exactly the color from the car. This was the idea. And the reflection in the car was exactly a reflection of the light themselves. It's similar with outdoor shooting. If you have a blue sky and the sun disappears, and for a few seconds the sky is blue, and you have a crystal clear reflection in the whole car. But you hardly find a place where you have only the reflection from the sky, because normally you have a tree or a house or something around. And I did later, many years after my invention of Magic Flash, I did many light tests on outdoor settings. But even in the desert, you always have something. The best is you have a parking place, 10 by 10 kilometers, and things around are very small. But I did it on helipads, but everywhere where you are, you have things. They disturb the reflection. And in the studio, you can cover everything in black and put your light box over the car, on the side or above. And only this light reflects and show the piece of the car you want to show.
Ganz Control, yeah?
Genau. Yeah, control is everything.
And so you're really the guy who invented these large-scale studio lights.
I was the first who bring it to publish. I am sure that many people work on this idea, especially the American photographers, but they did it different. Most of them, they made it like big panels, and they shine the panel with floaters, and they struggle with the covering of the tripods and all the stuff, because they want to show only the reflection from the panel, and everything around they have to cover. And for me, it was easier because I had the light in the box. So left or right of the box, everything is dark. I have a much easier control, and this helped me to do the shot quicker. The funny thing is, if you have a car and you have a budget, you have to divide it through the working hours or working days. And even a photographer sell himself as an artist, he has to keep the budget in the view. And with the Magic Flash Lightbox, it was a very fast working set. So I can make a couple of pictures on the same day with one car. And special that time, from the 80s until the beginning of the new century, car companies had only a few, sometimes only one shooting car. And this was blocked for film, for blah, blah, blah. So they give the car to a photographer 3 or 5 days, but they need 50 or 100 pictures. And that's why the setup has to be fast and the workflow has to be optimized.
So it was not just the quality of the image or the precision of the light, it was also the efficiency of your system.
Yeah. If you have no efficiency in this business, you cannot get the job. It's still today. My last big shooting was in Sicily. Maserati gave me 12 cars, same time. 1 week, 12 cars. Normally you need 1 week, 1 car. So 12 cars, 12 weeks. But they don't give you 12 weeks because everybody needs it now. I could have 20% on top if I delivered yesterday.
Yes, so you have quite a financial incentive to be efficient.
Yes. And this helped me when I start working with my own lighting system, because I get good jobs and I got enough to increase my employees. And I think I was one of the first creative guy who offered a studio with 24 working hours a day. So let's say 2 or 3 shifts.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That helped me to develop more lights, more variation. And 2 years after invention of Magic Flash, it gave me the money to build a studio for car photography, especially for my way of workflow, of setting. And this was very unique. When I opened the studio 1986, they called it not studio, they called it the Dream Palace. Dream Palace of car photography. Yeah. They say, we go to Staud's temple.
Staud's Temple. I love it.
Yeah.
René, who was your first manufacturer client?
It was so funny. For the test shots in 82 and 83, I need a car. Though the easiest way, I go to a car tuning company. They have the nicest cars and the lowest budget. I don't know if you know IMG, you know Brabus, but there is only one guy in this market. It is Lorenzer.
Sure.
Lorenzer was a company, put the car down and they make it wider and crazy, but they have a smaller budget. So I make them a deal and say, Mr. Lorenzer, you give me all your cars, I make you a small price and a good advertisement. And this was my first big client. So I had 2-3 cars every month while I increased the quality of the light bank. And in 83, there came the day for the official presentation. And to this presentation day, I sent hundreds of invitations and I expect hundreds of people. It was so funny because the studio was okay for 100, 120, 150 people. But I think what will happen when there came more, 200 or 500 or 1,000? And I could not remember that I drink or smoke anything this time. But I say to a friend, what can I do when there came 500? I let them out on the street. Could you help me with big monitors? We make the show in the studio and we make the presentation outside. And I expect really hundreds of people, and at the end, 20 are coming.
Oh, no.
And in the evening, 10 or 11, I go in my office, and I was thinking, what shit have you done? I have 2,000 Porsche for the catering. Could you imagine? In Germany, we have pretzel, and we have Leberkäse. You know what is Leberkäse? And I thought, okay, I need only easy food, beer, pretzel, Leberkäse. But I had 2,000 pretzel because I think many people and nothing should run out. Okay, I thought, what can I do with 1,000 Leberkäse, 1,000 pretzel? For beer was easy, can bring it back. But the pretzel is old at the other day. And while I am thinking in my office, they knock on the door. A guy came in and say, I'm deeply impressed and want to make a deal with you. And this is my business card. And he was a marketing responsible of Mercedes. And I was impressed. I said, oh, you were here. Nice, cool. And for a quick time, I think to myself, shit, 20 people, when the right one was here. And he asked me if I can give him 50 days for the rest of the year or better. And we pay you a proper money because we have some new models in the pipeline. And he booked 100 shooting days at this time.
Suddenly, it didn't matter that the turnout was not what you expected.
Exactly. And a few days later, I got a call from Porsche. And they asked me to have a look on a new car, on a new model. And they explained me, besides the 911, we are working on the fastest, on the best, on the most expensive ever, coolest. It was a 959. And they give me this car. Could you imagine? So I had in the same year the 959 and the baby Benz.
Wunderbar.
Yeah, that was wunderbar. That was the time my life has changed. From that day, I never had problems to find the job. I only had problem to fulfill it. That's why I moved to Leonberg, bigger studio. I increased from 4 employees to 30 that time, built more light banks and the night shift, the Saturday, Sunday shift, because my competitor, he worked 12 hours with indirect light, takes a lot of time. And with a magic flash, boff, boff. It was fantastic.
Yeah, you had a competitive advantage immediately.
Yeah. It's not only business, it's also art, and it's work for my heart.
Well, clearly, you're passionate about the cars. I mean, that comes through in your photography. And as I said earlier, of course, you have many, many books. How many books? Well, let me ask you this first. When did you decide to begin producing books?
From the first day when I worked with the car companies, there are also projects with books, but not my books. But whenever I had a car in the studio, they need a couple of pictures for their books. So I see that the book is an important thing, but I thought book is a thing of a writer. And much, 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 much later, I thought in some of books that my photography is so important that it's more a photographer's book than a copywriter's book. And it was a little competition because the copywriter and the editor, they decide how the book looks. And now we come exactly to the SL. It was in 88 when I shoot the first SLs on budget for Mercedes-Benz. Even the car was 30 years old. They bring the SL, the Gullwing, the Roadster hardtop. They bring the cars in my studio for test shoot, for testing and finding new picture language for the upcoming SLR 129. And this picture they use also with Jürgen Lewandowski for a book they called 300 SL car art book or something. It was a blue book and it was full with SLs and many of the test shooting. And the R129 was launched in 1989, and I decided for this launch I published some posters from my vintage SLs, and I had the test prints of the posters on my desk, and I had the test prints of the book on my desk, and it was a shame in the book because of the folding pages. All cars are divided. And on my posters, they were plain, they were flat, they were one piece. And I decided I make a calendar. And this was the beginning of the 300 SL calendar. But the funny thing around this story is Mercedes-Benz gave me the money for a 6-8 week long shooting for the cars they did not have in the portfolio. It was on this time also vintage cars. Not valuable like today, but it was a vintage car and nobody care about. And they bring the vintage car for a modern shooting. And I think this was a special thing, this innovative light and my young career engagement and this classic old stuff from the 50s, very unique pictures. With the new 300 SL book launching now this month, I have a full revised book with many new shots. They did not exist before in any books because the last 4 or 5 years I had exceptional cars from collectors to shoot in the Leonberg studios, but I had no possibility to publish these pictures because there was no project. And with this book, I have also a new beginning for my wallpaper collection. Many of these pictures I publish in big art prints.
René, Mercedes-Benz built 1,400 gull wings between 1955 and 1957. How many of the gull wings have you photographed?
Good question. I did not count exactly, but it should be between 60 and 70. And I'm very proud to have some very popular cars of this 1400. These are not only 70 cars, these are some very, very special cars because Mercedes select some and collectors select some, like the first Gullwing came to United States on the New York Motor Show 1954. This car is in the book. Or cars from famous actors, or the most iconic Playboy ever, Ruby Rosa. His car is also in the book. There are many cars in the book. They have a big story, but Jürgen Lewandowski, my copywriter, he focused on the technique and the innovation and all on the car, but not so on the lifestyle, because the owner of these cars sometimes a little bit,
Yeah, the owners can be quite discreet and private.
Yeah, there are no, all the numbers on the cars are fake numbers because the owners, they will not connect to their cars.
Do you mean the number plates or the serial number?
No, the serial number you don't see in the book, but the number plate, with the number plate, you can coordinate to the collectors. And I have a couple of collectors, they are proud. They say, yes, the number plate is part of the car and show it. And I'm proud to be in the book. And the others say, no, you can use this picture, but without plate or with a fake plate. Normally, I change only some numbers.
I see. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean, there are prominent people who want to maintain their privacy, and that's very difficult, especially in our world today. René, what's been your favorite car over your career to photograph? If you had to pick one, what would it be?
In the SL series, for me, the most exceptional car with an amazing story is the Uhlenhaut Coupe. The Uhlenhaut Coupe is the race version of the 300 SL with an 8-cylinder engine in row, and I cannot explain in English. There is 8-cylinder in a row, and there is no chance to make the gearbox in front or in rear because it's too long, it will break. All the power goes from the middle. So it's 4-cylinder left and 4-cylinder right, and needs a lot of space. That's the SL Uhlenhaut is longer, and it's a one-off car. Even he built two, but this car was planned to go in competition, but due to changements of the Formula One competition, this car never goes in competition. But I think this is the most interesting model. And I had this car in 1989 for my shooting for the calendar. And this time the insurance was 11,000 Deutschmark for 1 week, because this car was that time with $25 million insured. After this time, there was no chance to get this car out of Mercedes in any place for shooting, because this is the jewel.
It's irreplaceable.
Yeah.
So for people who may not know, this is the same straight 8 engine that was in the W196, the SLR.
Exactly. Yeah. And this guy, Uhlenhaut, he was the chief designer, a chief engineer at Mercedes, and he used this car as his personal test car, and he had an office in Stuttgart and München. And there is a very nice story when he had a board meeting, and this board meeting was already not finished at 12 o'clock, and the CEO asked, Mr. Uhlenhaut, I know you have appointment at 2 o'clock in Munich, and you already here. And he said, it's okay, I go in 30 minutes because I do it in 1 hour 10. This car was 300 this time. And he did it, 300.
René, how far is it between Stuttgart and Munich?
212 kilometers.
And he did it in an hour, and normally it would take you 3 hours.
Today, yeah, because there was no traffic and no signs.
Great story.
Yeah.
René, are you also a classic car owner?
Yes, I have a couple of cars, and I had many. So let's say I bought totally 50, and I still have 10, but I change it through the times.
What's in your garage right now?
The most important is the Porsche from 1974, the 2.7 liter or 73. But I have the 74 as a Targa. This is a competition and totally cool open car on a fast track.
So your Targa, it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's got that competition breeding, but an open car for just enjoyable cruising.
Exactly. This is perfect. And for sure, if you're a Porsche lover, you need a 72 911, the Ölklappe, and you need the later ones also, the typical G model. I have one from 84 as a Targa. I have one from 83 as a coupe. And I also have the very last coupe from 89. And I also have from 67, I have Austin Healey. And I have from 65 Land Rover. And if you follow me on Instagram, actually have pictures of the 84 Targa from Morocco. We do this in October next, 1,000 miles through Morocco.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Did you ever want to buy a gullwing of your own? Did you ever want to own a gullwing?
I had, for many years, I had a own gullwing. For my 50th birthday, I bought a couple, a gullwing and a roadster. And after a very short time, I had the chance to participate Mille Miglia, and I ran Mille Miglia 4 times with a gullwing. And after, I sold both cars and put the money in the company back. But it was a good period, and it was not a bad business, but I would not keep it forever because makes not big sense, because there is no possibilities to drive the gullwing. In the 80s or in the 90s in Germany, we made a classic car Corso during the Formula One race. This was a nice occasion. And we had some competition with these cars on Nürburgring. But the time when the prices increase, people did not run these cars. And that's the biggest problem of the Mercedes SL. Everybody knows the value. The one does not use it because of the value, and the other shame to use it because other know the value. And this is the secret of the Porsche 2.7 Targa, because everybody think, it's a $50,000 car. They don't know it's a $300,000 car. And from the experience and from the fun and from the, it's a legend. This car, 8,000 rounds per minute. I met a friend, he ran the car experience at Porsche, and last time he just came from a 918 trip through the Dolomite, and he told me, René, you could not imagine we are there with 25 918 GT2 RS and a couple of GT3, but the most perfect car would be your 2.7 Targa, because the streets are very small. And with the 918, you run 180 kilometers and you feel nothing. And with the 2.7 Targa, you run 130 and you think you're on 300. That's the impression.
Yeah, that's the problem with modern cars, is that you have to really push them hard in order to get the same sensation. And this is why, like, driving a slow car fast is more fun.
Yeah.
an air-cooled Porsche 911 is probably the perfect sports car.
Yeah, and if you like driving only in the sun, that's why the Targa is the choice.
Well, René, the new SL book will be in stores in a few weeks. It'll be also available at your website, which is RenéStaudGallery.com.
Yes, and I ship this book worldwide, and people have the chance to order it signed or with a personal note. And in a couple of weeks, I launch my new website, and I have also cool stories around the 300 SL books, step by step also to the other books, backgrounds and wallpaper shots and so on.
Yeah, and I would encourage people to go check out your website. I mean, just to give a few examples, The Art of Bugatti, The Art of Mercedes, The Art of Porsche, BMW Classics, British Classics, the Porsche 911 book. The list goes on and on. They're all beautiful. And again, the website is RenéStaudGallery.com. I'll have links in the show notes. René, thanks again. I really appreciate your time today. It was fun talking to you.
Thank you very much, Maurice. It was also a pleasure from my side, and I keep you updated with my latest newsletters.
All right, have a good evening. Take care. Hey, before we go this week, guys, I just want to share some thoughts on this episode. You know, René mentioned he photographed the Mercedes-Benz Uhlenhaut Coupe, of which only 2 were built, and they were developed as part of the company's racing program. But for several reasons, including the 1955 Le Mans disaster, they were never actually raced. Anyway, one of those cars was just sold by Mercedes for an eye-watering $143 million, which makes it by far the most expensive car in history. And I'm planning on doing a future story on the Uhlenhaut Coupes, but if you haven't caught my episode on the terrible 1955 Le Mans disaster, check that out. It's from March 23rd of this year, and it's quite a tale. That's all for this episode of Horsepower Heritage. My thanks to René Staud. Don't forget to follow, rate, and review the show. And trust me, it really makes a huge difference, and your engagement really matters. Go to buymeacoffee.com and support the podcast for as little as $2 or whatever amount you like. And I'll see you back here on Wednesday, June 15th with more of the people and the stories behind the machines. So until then, I'm Maurice Merrick. Thanks for listening.